What is best way to avoid awkward silence in conversations? Ask a question. I had a situation at school this week where we had to bring someone in and my person bailed last minute, so I had to post online and find a stranger to come in with me. We provide a service that people would need or want, so I have the stranger come in and I don't know anything about him except his name. Anytime there was a long pause, I would just ask him about himself. What does he like to do? Had he done anything he was proud of during quarantine? How is he feeling with the shutdowns? How is his work affected? After learning where he works, just asking more questions about his work. With friends I do the same. Ask follow-up questions to things they have said. There is always more that can be explained. Eventually they'll say something you can relate to or have something of your own to share. Do you read about things that are interesting to you? Ask them, have you heard? And then tell them about something you read or saw on the news. Do you like a certain show or video game? Do they? Most important, don't rapid-fire questions. Let them naturally connect. Use what they said to either comment or ask for more information. If you're jumping from question to unrelated question, it's going to come off really impersonal. At worst, it will seem like you're trying to control the conversation and avoid talking about yourself. When we had to form groups with new people, this way when no one was talking it didn't feel like awkward silence. I would recommend this to anyone that has a group of people that are meeting for the first time. My bio professor does the same thing when he makes polls during online class. Only problem is that he plays the music out of his phone into his PC's mic, which means that when we hear it, it sounds more like a demon shrieking in agony to the tune of bossa nova. Look into the distance like you're a sailor contemplating something, and go, This is what I do all the time. Not sure if you are serious or not, but I do this because I'm naturally caught up in my thoughts about some stupid shit and don't mind being in the company of someone. If a natural silence comes, I will use it to reflect on the conversation we have just had or any mental tangents. But yes, very pensive pirate is my style. Yeah, heredity there. The trick I have learned as a lifelong introvert is that people love talking about themselves. For example, if they said they come from city X or country Y, you can ask them if they love living there, and if yes, what do they prefer? If not, why not? Or where would they prefer living? If you can find their passion, whether it's binge watching Netflix series, making tiny glass vases for their hamsters, or going to country music festivals, you'll be golden. Even if it's not something that you yourself find interesting, you can fake it by making appropriate comments and asking follow-up questions. How did you get into that? What's your favorite series/technique/artist? What's your next project? Remember, this is about learning about them, not coming up with the most savvy reply. So actually listen to what they say. Alternatively, an awkward silence can be a great point to cut the conversation short and leave, if that's what you want to do. Try readdressing something you already talked about. For example, so you said you were from where? Was it Florida? It will either go, oh yes, Florida, or oh no, I'm from Oregon. And then if you get it wrong, apologize and continue the conversation by talking about Florida, or in this case, where they're from. Of course this applies to any topic. Another example, how old did you say you were again? Oh, I'm 24. Cool, so fresh of college, or still in college, and continue on from there, talking about college or some other things. The key is to stay interested enough to keep the conversation going. Ask questions, and if you feel like you're asking too much, add in facts about yourself too. You can literally talk about anything, not just age or school, just basically anything they mentioned beforehand. If they mentioned having kids, roll over there. Really, anything. I'd like to narrate something. So, this is when me and a former classmate were talking after a long time. So I call her, we are talking. and trying to continue the conversation even if that means dragging it somewhat. In the mid-silence falls and she says, "Well, awkward silence, ha." Now, a few months after, we are again on a call, and this silence happens again. This time I say awkward silence and she replies with not awkward, it's just silence. See, here's the thing. Once you get acquainted with a person, once you have no inhibitions about talking to them about anything, once you can start talking to them like you talk with your brothers, gals, the silence won't be an awkward one. And this takes time to develop, this kind of a relationship. It might be easier with same-sex person and tougher with the other, but it'll happen. Just give it its sweet time. Hope this perception helps. Smile. Good day. Sitting in silence isn't all too bad. Like, try to think of the scene in Clue when Mrs. Peacock tries to force a conversation. It can be like that. I suggest making a comment on the silence, or if it's pointed silence, meaning a silent understanding or some kind of subjective bomb dropped, try to shift the topic. A lot of the answers avoid the elephant in the room, that after a while only asking questions or agreeing with the person gets a bit old and you have to think quickly on your feet and add in relevant stories/facts/emotions from your own life/experiences/knowledge. Just agreeing with someone or asking question after question is being intellectually, emotionally lazy, and it is a turn-off to most people. Suggest you do the work beforehand so you have a few amusing, go-to stories to fill in silence. It's almost like preparing for an interview. Also, feel free to change the topic to something you are more comfortable talking about. It's okay if the transition isn't perfect, but at least you're showing effort. When a person pauses in mid-sentence to choose a word, that's the best time to jump in and change the subject. It's like an interception in football. You grab the other guy's idea and run the opposite way with it. The more sentences you complete, the higher your score. The idea is to block the other guy's thoughts and express your own. That's how you win. Lulls in conversation are totally normal. Natural. Learn to work with it. Wait until you have a sincere observation or question. Ask yourself which is more awkward, a little bit of silence, or being a person who's scrambling desperately to keep the conversation lively or engaging, like some awful sports commentary or morning radio show. Quality versus quantity. IMO. Silence speaks volumes, etc. Of course, I make people uncomfortable being quiet, which results in fewer relationships, but I'd rather have a couple strong bonds than 1,000 friends with whom I can only discuss the weather. Check the time. It is usually 20 to or 20 past the hour, and whether it is or isn't, it is an easy topic to run with. Like, silence falls. You look at each other before someone starts with the nervous laughter. You say, "Oh, is it 20 to or 20 past?" Everyone checks, eager for the distraction. If it is near enough either time, point out that silences allegedly often fall then. If not, wonder aloud what was different this time. Conversation then tends to spring up again, either around the time thing, or coincidences, or the power of anecdotal evidence, the football scores, Gogglebox. You can join in or slink off. Job done. This 11-minute TED Talk from a professional radio host, rewatched every few months, did far more for me than any amount of pure nonsense, social anxiety group therapy sessions or charisma on command videos. Of particular note is the part about listening. People leave all kinds of conversational hooks in the content of what they're saying. You just need to catch on to one of those, and the conversation carries on under its own momentum. For the longest time I never realized this, because I was too busy concentrating on the next interesting or witty thing I was about to say, or putting on a performance of so-called active listening, nodding, making yeah and sounds, etc., rather than just actually, really listening. As soon as I started doing that, as well as following the other advice within the video, going with the flow, not getting bogged down by details, etc. My ability to have conversations opened up, and they became natural, spontaneous, stress-free, and above all, a lot more interesting. It wasn't long before people even started complimenting me on being a good listener or a good conversationalist, which was something I'd never really been told before, and it felt like I hadn't had to work on myself at all. All I'd done was watch some video and tried to remember the gist of it every now and again. 1. Just say this is getting awkward, admit it, then ask if the other person wants to do an awkward pause. 2. Look at something and play that remind me of. Like if there's a tree, just say that we can find the age of trees by counting circles on them, but I have no idea where are the circles on a tree. Do you? Here, knowing the interest of other person helps because then you can pick a topic they'll want to talk about too. 3. Or don't say or do anything. It's also good to have a silent atmosphere here and there. As someone else said, silence is natural, but you can always make fun of it. And now we reach that awkward silence. For me, I do a bit of public speaking. What I found makes public speaking easy is knowing your subject. Don't get me wrong, I'm always nervous and feel like I'm going to vomit before speaking, but that's natural. But going up on a stage and speaking to anywhere between 20 and 200 people, it's best to just know your topic instead of relying on slides. Same can be said for an individual if it's someone you've been chatting with for a while and got to know a bit about. If you're literally just meeting this person and did not have time to exchange likes, dislikes via text or whatever, then use this time to find that out. What are they passionate about? What do they hate? What's their family situation, if they're comfortable sharing, and so on. You don't see them as awkward. Traffic has gaps between cars, and only the assholes feel like their car needs to bounce all over the highway attempting to fill every frigging gap, and only awkward people attempt to fill conversational gaps when they haven't yet figured out anything interesting to say. Talk to a 10-year-old who is a blabber. They can't tolerate a gap, and are constantly filling them with blather and foolishness. Those gaps should tell you things are going well. My favorite: invite the silence, own it. That way it is silent because you chose it to. More times than not the other part will start talking about whatever and then you can just go along with that. If breaking the silence was your goal, then it is smooth sailing from here, since you just confirmed that they want to break it as well. Let out a nice big fart. It will totally take away from the awkward silence and it's the perfect icebreaker. Pro tip: slightly constrict your anal sphincter so it's a high-pitched squeaker and lasts longer. You don't want a quick whoosh fart that may go unnoticed. You want a very distinct sound that is undeniably a fart and will catch their attention. Hopefully it's so loud and so obvious that they can't do anything but laugh at the ridiculousness of the situation. The awkward silence will dissipate within a mere matter of seconds, and you will also develop a close bond with this person because you allowed yourself to be vulnerable enough and comfortable enough around them that you let out a piercing squeaker. They say vulnerability and shared experience bring people closer together, and this checks both of those boxes. So go dominate some awkward silences and make lifelong friends. Be interesting. Kidding, but having things you are passionate about helps. As for drawing things out of others, a couple of easy tricks is to ask questions to others. People like to talk about themselves. Once someone tells you about themselves, find common ground. They grew up in another state. Whoa, I've never been there. How was the weather? Schools, football team. Whatever, just keep the convo going and find something else to remark or tell a personal story on. People love when you share personal stories as well. Not like, "I'm so awesome" story, but stories that show emotion or feelings. Lets people know they can trust you anyhow. Just start talking to people and you will learn how to talk to anyone in whatever situation you find yourself and not overthink it. Also, you stop caring as you age and don't worry, what if I say something they think is stupid? Cheers. Lulls in conversation happen all the time, and they are natural. However, I understand how they can feel awkward depending on level of confidence, relationship with the other person, etc. If you do feel compelled to keep mouth sounds going when getting to know someone but have nothing that immediately comes to mind, ask questions about the last thing that was brought up. This will put the onus of keeping the conversation going on them, and will create a stronger bond all while keeping the heat off you. Bonus: the answer they provide will likely spark something for you to take off from. Enjoy. When I'm in a moment like that, the awkward silence seems to result from either a miscommunication, or running out of things to talk about. Both of those things benefit a lot from transparency, but I feel like it's the second one I run into a lot. A while back I just decided to be upfront about it once I started to anticipate it coming. Well, I feel like that's basically all we've got. Huh? Anything else you wanted to talk about? I'm kind of out of ideas. Man, talk is hard, isn't it? Want to do something else? You don't even have to use it as an exit. You can just ask what your friend/date/whoever wants to do instead, or just suggest something. A lot of people just enjoy silence if they're given the opportunity, and coming from someone who used to be a chronic filler of air, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sometimes people, especially those close to you, just want to be in your presence without thinking of more shit to talk about. In those cases I come prepared, and I've grown to love it. You don't realize how much work conversation can be until you've gotten used to just hanging out and watching a movie together, or reading a book, or enjoying the sunrise, sunset, or watching boats on a lake, or walking in the park and not having to talk the entire time. COVID can make a lot of this hard, but you can apply the same rule as long as you have a backup in mind, like a video game or a suggestion similar to that, like watching a movie or show in a shared service offering, or finding a Steam to watch or listen to together, if you're into that, or, God forbid, just calling it quits there and suggesting you go for a walk or something later on or on another day. People are grateful for not having their time wasted, and if you're trying to find things to talk about, they can naturally evolve out of having shared experiences more quickly than you may think. The best way is to stop considering silence to be awkward. It's perfectly normal to have some silences in a conversation. If it starts to make you uncomfortable, look around and see if other people are uncomfortable. If they're not, let it go. If others also look uncomfortable, then it's time to say something and get the conversation rolling again. Try comparing a politician to Hitler, or saying that a major religion is stupid, or you can just fart loudly and challenge anybody there to do better. I came here to voice this sentiment. Adjusting your relationship to silence is pretty huge. The cognitive shift from silence is an inherently negative thing to silence is what happens when people are thinking or listening can really change the emotional association, and you can begin to use it as a tool. And because you aren't living in fear of it happening, you're in a better presence of mind to perceive when it's beneficial to interject, and how. If it's a new person, find some baseline information. I recommend the acronym FORK. Family. Most people have something to say about family, good or bad. Occupation. Where do they work? Where did they retire from? Where do they want to work? Recreation. Ask about hobbies, entertainment, whatever, just what they do in their spare time. Knowledge. Ask them if there's anything they know a lot about, usually something mentioned in an earlier topic, like what they do at their job, what's it like living at their hometown, etc. I've had some deep conversations about space, religion, movies, etc. from this one. It's great, real great. If there's someone you already know, you can still go through those steps, just pick more advanced questions. How's your sister doing? Does work suck during the pandemic? You ever finish that movie series? Remember when we had that deep conversation about the expansion of the universe and God? That was crazy. First, recognize that silence does not mean either you or your conversation partner are feeling awkward. Sometimes, silence signals that you are either digesting an idea or coming up with another. Since the movie His Girl Friday, Howard Hawks' 1940s screwball comedy, too many people think that talking over one another or talking too fast to really hear one another is how normal people talk, when it isn't. Only egotists talk over other people, and way too many people, speaking strictly of Americans I know, have lost the ability to actually listen to other people, which is one reason why so many seminars on building relationships or building companies emphasize learning how to truly hear other people. If you listen to most talk show hosts, they act one of two ways: they truly listen and engage with the people they are interviewing, so that they seem to have a real conversation, or they do not listen to what the people they are interviewing are saying, so that they seem to be grilling the person, not conversing. We want to aim for the former. The best thing to say to someone, even if you do not agree with her/his/zai's point of view, is to say, "I hear you." That simple act acknowledges that you have heard what they said, and that you may even sympathize with their point of view. But, best of all, acknowledges that they have been heard, which is the primary thing most people want in their relationships, especially since it is often so challenging to actually sympathize with someone whose views you do not share. Hearing, active listening, is the first real step to creating a connection. Once you have heard what the other person says or have observed how your questions provoke a reaction in the other person's behavior, you have more information on which to act, but especially more information on whether or not you should continue the conversation.